Hello and welcome to Demystifying Biometrics, the podcast where we dive into the world of digital identity, biometrics, and everything in between. I'm your host, Ashok Singhal, and I'm thrilled to kick off the second season of our show. If you have been following us since last season, welcome back. And if you're new here, you are in for a treat as we explore some fascinating topics around mobile driver's licenses or mDLs and how their role is growing in transforming how we prove who we are. For our very first episode of this new season, we are starting off strong by diving into one of the leading mDL initiatives in the US, Georgia's mobile driver's license program. And to help us unpack this, I'm honored to have Angelique, who's leading the charge on this exciting program from within the Georgia DMV. Angelique, welcome to Demystifying Biometrics. Let's start with a quick introduction. And if you could please tell our listeners a bit about yourself and how you came into your current role.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Angelique McClendon, Georgia Department of Driver Services General Counsel. Very happy to serve in this role. I've served in this role since 2015. Prior to that, I advised driver services and other boards from the Attorney General's office here in the state of Georgia. DDS, as we call our Department of Driver Services, is unique within the U.S. as we do not issue vehicle registrations or titles. We only focus on the person. So we only issue driver's licenses, which means we dive deep into identity. Identity, and if you are who you say you are, is very important to us. So that's very key to what we do. We issue secure credentials, and most of those credentials typically have a driving privilege attached to them. So you can, be issued an ID with no driving privilege or a driver's license with a driving privilege. So how I came into this role is really sort of an interesting role from, deciding what I wanted to be, when I grew up, so to speak. Becoming a lawyer was something initially I hadn't planned to be a lawyer. I have a chemistry background, and I actually ended up going to law school. And so after having prosecuted for a number of years, I joined the Attorney General's office, and of course, Driver Services became one of my clients, and I've been serving in-house with them since 2015. And it's been a great ride here. We do some very, very interesting things.
Awesome. Now we will talk about some of these interesting things for sure. And I remember when I was speaking with you last time, I was fascinated by your story from being a degree in chemistry to being a lawyer. So I've not heard of that. So kudos to that.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. All right. So that's great to hear. Georgia has definitely been a leader in the digital identity space, and the mDL program has generated a lot of buzz. So let's dive right into the current state of Georgia mDL program. The Georgia mDL program was officially launched in the May of last year. Angelique, can you share with us how both citizens and businesses have responded to the program so far?
One word for us, and it's been great, excitement. So even talking about the concept, when legislation was being passed in 2020, when we were, getting executive authority to move along with this project many years prior to launch, there's always been excitement around the possibility of a digital version of your driver's license or ID. There's super excitement. So naturally, when it launched, the excitement was still there. And so we're now at a point where people are excited to have it and really want to use it. So then the question is, where can they use it? Where will it be accepted beyond TSA? Because that is our pilot.
Awesome. Sounds good. That's actually very great. For our listeners who are in Georgia and have not set up their mDL yet, how can they set up their mobile driver's license on their iPhones?
So we launched with Apple last year. Shortly thereafter, we launched with Google. Samsung is soon to come. And so we have Android and iOS options. They can download it similar to how you add a credit card to your wallet, your digital wallet. So you're going to probably hear me talk and compare the process to how you use your digital credit cards and debit cards because it is similar, and that's just an easy way for people to relate so they won't be so intimidated by this new emerging technology. But it's similar to that. You go to your wallet and you add it in the same way you would add a credit card. So you have to go through the same process with verifying the actual card and the information that's on the card. And also, so you would take a picture front and back, and then you're also taking a picture of yourself to compare to our photo of record to make sure you are who you say you are, and the right person is adding that digital license to their mobile device.
I think the second point that you mentioned of selfie capture and linking the selfie with the comparing the picture on the document with the selfie,
Yes.
I think that is very critical, because
It
then
is
that will
very,
make sure it's the
very
owner of the document who is actually setting up or provisioning the
exactly.
mobile driver's license.
Exactly. That is key. It's key to that identity verification, making sure that the person holding that credential, whether it's the card or even in this case, we're talking about the digital version, the digital driver's license, or the mDL or mobile driver's license, whichever your jurisdiction calls it, making sure that that person attempting to provision it and using it is the right person. And you do that by comparing it to the photo of record, which the state DMV, in our case DDS, will have access to. So you're comparing it to that because it matters so much what you're comparing that live selfie to. If you're comparing that live selfie to something that's not authentic and hasn't already been verified, then there's a problem there. But with the state of record and with the jurisdiction having access to that photo to compare it to, and that photo has already been verified as belonging to that identity, then that actually gives it more credibility when you're adding your digital license to your mobile device.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And Angelique, is the process any different for Android users from iOS users, or?
Again, it's similar to how you would add your anything else to your digital wallet in Android space.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So from provisioning, let's talk about the data on a driver's license. Are there any differences in terms of data between a physical driver's license and an mDL?
So the data is the same data. It's going to show, your demographic information, your name, date of birth, address, issue date, any other attributes that would be on the card. But, the difference is in how it looks, right? If you look at it, it's going to, again, be similar to your digital credit card, where it looks similar. It looks like, it's supposed to look, but it doesn't have all that information on there to the visual, to the eye. It has to be verified through tap or QR code reading, and not just looking at that actual digital representation. So all that information is not readily visible because it's supposed to be verified cryptographically. And so that's the difference in how it looks, but the information is the same. And one key thing to note with the digital version, you can limit that information that is shared, right? So if I have my driver's license, all that information, like we stated, is on the front of that card, right? And so, you have a card here and you're going to have, name, date of birth, address, all this information is on this card here. And so you have that on that card, but maybe the person only needs to know that you're over 21. Or maybe the person only needs to know you're over 25 for age verification or just certain information. They don't need to know your actual address or your full name. But if we're using the card, we have to share all that information. But if you are using your digital version, then they can only get verification that, yeah, this is Angelique, but she's over 21. They don't need to know that I'm actually over 40, or my actual date of birth. And so that is one key difference, and that's one benefit to the digital driver's license.
That's very comforting, because every time I hand over my driver's license to a bar agent or in restaurant, I'm always hesitant around, hey, you're looking at my address, a lot of other details that you don't even need. So I'm glad that mDL is going to finally address that problem, and I can selectively disclose what I want to share with that business based on the need. That's wonderful. That's important to know. Is there a cost for holders to use the mDL?
No, it's not. And so that was key for our jurisdiction, for Georgia, and other jurisdictions too. I think some early cost models sort of suggested maybe a charge for downloading and maybe a charge for usage, but you don't want to slow adoption, right? And so when you're dealing with presentment of identity, you want to be careful about that. So the versions that are out now that are active and live, there are no cost to consumers for using it. And we refer to our, customers as customers, so we can deliver that great customer service. But there's no cost to the customer for downloading it, for using it to verify their identity. No cost.
That's wonderful. So as a holder or as a user, I can already see a lot of benefits. I don't need to go to DMV to get my driver's license. I can provision it from home.
Mhm.
There's no cost associated. I have control over my data.
Right.
It's already a lot of benefits for me as a user
Yes.
user of the
Right.
program.
And to address one thing you said, you can provision it from home. You don't have to come in to provision it. You have to come in to see us because you have to already have a valid credential from us, right? So you can't use it with an expired, card. Or if you're new to Georgia, we wouldn't issue the first credential we issue you would not be a digital credential. You'll have to come in person to see us, and that's the good part, because that way we've already sort of done an in-person interview. We've verified your physical attributes, your face, that you say you are. We've verified your address. We've verified your date of birth, social, all your identity points, to make sure that it is the right person that we're issuing this plastic or hard credential, this card credential to. And then you can add on a benefit, which is the digital version of it.
Fantastic. Awesome. All right. So moving on. So what we have done so far is we've talked about provisioning of mobile driver's license, the data. So let's talk about the usage of mDLs. So how does someone use their mDL to prove their identity? What are the different methods of verification available today?
Yeah, so different methods are in different jurisdictions. We've talked a lot about the manufacturer base, the phone manufacturer base digital wallets like Apple, Google, Samsung. But then there are also some app-based versions of that. Utah has that. Louisiana, California has an app-based version of it as well, and they work just as well. And but the usage of it could vary from an NFC tap to a QR code reading. So it could generate a QR code to be read. So those are different ways that it can be used to be verified, and those are all ways that people are already used to using things on their mobile device to for payment, for entry into events, for tickets, things like that. And so it's, again, similar to what we're already used to adding to our wallet. So I talk a lot about credit cards being added to your wallet, but also tickets. Nowadays, you buy a ticket to a sporting event or other events, and you have the option of adding it to your wallet. And when you get to that sporting event, they're going to verify and read that from your phone.
Got it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone now is used to scanning QR codes. We all
Right.
tap our credit
Yes.
cards. We're using NFC. So it's pretty
Yes.
much the same technology, but it's like giving you more control of your data. You have your identity in your wallet,
Yes.
digital wallet.
Exactly.
Awesome. So that's a perfect segue into our next section of the podcast, which is around the security. I actually did a poll on LinkedIn on the
Great.
usage of mobile driver's license and how open and reluctant participants are to use their driver's license. And I found that 14% of the people mentioned that they're very concerned about security of their data, the privacy of their data. So let's talk about the security and privacy of the mobile driver's license data and some concerns that are associated with it. So let's talk about security first. Are there any genuine concerns about the safety of mDL data if someone's phone is stolen?
So I would say no. If your phone is stolen, so let's compare, the digital version versus the physical version. Physical version being in your actual wallet, right? And then you have your digital version in your phone. So what happens? Your wallet's stolen. That person has immediate access to your information. No biometric checks, no password checks, no two-factor verification. It's just, hey, I got this wallet. Now I know where this person lives. I know their date of birth, have all this information. I even know what they look like. I have their credit card. I have their credit card number. I have the CVV code on the back. You already have that. That's immediate access to that valuable information. You drop your phone, you lose your phone, it's biometrically protected, password protected, the actual device. Then you have to get to the wallet, which is also protected with layers of protection like biometrics. And so if I drop this, and this is my ID, and I drop it, next person picks it up, knows all about me. If I drop this, they're gonna have to do some work to get in my phone to find out that same information. So I would argue that the digital license is significantly more secure and significantly less vulnerable to that type of information being disclosed to the wrong people. But I think just knowing, it's just when people hear things being digitized and changing, you sort of go immediately to the fears versus the benefits. And so it's understandable how people would think that, because that's just a natural reaction to emerging technology and how will this work for me, and how. So people typically go directly to the fears versus the benefits, but it's definitely a benefit because it's layers of protection for your information versus having something with all the information readily available.
Yeah, no, I like the way you explained it with different layers. First layer being the device lock, and then you have the digital wallet lock.
Right.
And then even if somebody tries to get hands-on the mDL data, the data itself is encrypted.
Right,
So
exactly.
they can't even read that plain text. Everything is encrypted with PKI keys and cryptographic keys. So they
Exactly.
won't be able to have access to the raw data. Plain data.
So yes, the layers are very, very important.
Awesome. All right. So that's good to know. So let's talk about the privacy concerns. Does the state track when people use their mDL? Because that's one of the frequently received questions that I've received is like, hey, I have a fear that state might start tracking me if I start using my mDL.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we've heard those fears. But there was never any intention to track people's usage, and we do not track that. The jurisdictions don't track the people's usage of their mDL, their presentment of their ID or driver's license. So there's no tracking that's being done because this is digitized now. And so we have no idea where people are using it or attempting to use it even, but the user can see themselves again. And I'll compare to your digital wallet with credit cards. You can see where your debit card was used. It'll tell you each transaction. If you go into your digital wallet, it's something people probably don't do often, but you can see every transaction and where it's used, and that's for the person to see where it's used. And the person can also see in your digital wallet where it was presented, where your mobile driver's license was presented, and what information was shared with the relying party. And so we don't track that information, but the consumer has access to know where it was presented and what information was shared. And it also says that the information was not stored.
That should reassure definitely a lot of listeners. Another concern we have heard is that people feel they still need to carry their physical license even if they have an mDL. How would you address that concern?
So for right now, again, it's emerging. It's emerging technology. So a handful of jurisdictions, a handful of states have the digital license option, the mobile driver's license option. And so that is true. You really should still carry your physical ID around. Similar to for years and even now, I still carry my physical credit cards and debit card around, and hoping to be able to just use the digital version. And I will say probably since COVID, there have been more acceptance of the digital credit cards and debit cards. So probably for the past few months, I have been only using my debit card, in a digital version. But when I first saw that you could do that, I was excited about it, right? So I'm like, yeah, let me add it to my wallet. Let me go to, all these retailers and use it. And then you're like, okay, they don't accept it. And
Yeah.
so it's, you still have to have it. It's model legislation with AMVA. And I'm very active with AMVA, and that's our American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. And they've helped to work with standards, implementation guidelines. I'm currently chair of their mDL subcommittee and member of their identity management steering committee. So they're doing lots of work, doing the heavy lifting for adoption in this space. But it's, the model legislation that is available on AMVA's website for people to view and use when they're thinking about legislation in their jurisdiction. It mentions that, the physical card, may still have to be carried. I know in our legislation, law enforcement can still require you to produce your actual, your physical card. And that's just so technology can catch up. If you think about it, we're so right now we're on the internet. Right. But there are some people who in certain areas of the state that unfortunately do not have reliable internet access. And so when you think of things in that perspective, then technology has to catch up before people can totally ditch their plastic or in their physical card. And so law enforcement is also interested in accepting the digital version, but they have to have the technology to be able to do that and the resources.
Absolutely. If I have to summarize the security and privacy aspects or concerns of the holders, is basically their entire data is, encrypted with cryptographic keys. It's with layers of device security, biometrics. They have control over their data. They decide what to share with whom. It's completely privacy driven, and they have control over it.
Yes, exactly. Great summary.
Awesome. So we talked about issuers, basically in this case Georgia DMV. We talked about users. So let's pivot to businesses.
Yes.
Some businesses have expressed concerns that implementing mDL acceptance would require significant investment in infrastructure, in training, in hardware. How would you address these concerns? So what's basically the benefit for businesses to adopt mobile driver's license?
Well, an immediate benefit is a significant reduction in fraud risk because of the layers of security and the layers of verification that have already gone into verifying that identity of that person prior to issuance of the physical credential and the digital credential. And so there's significant benefits in fraud, reducing fraud risk, and also improving efficiency. So that would make it easier to verify these identities. Instead of a person, cashier having to know what all these different driver's licenses look like. So they might be familiar with what a Georgia driver's license look like, but what if you're from another state and you're, needing to verify your identity? If they're just verifying it digitally, they don't need to know what it should look like. They're just telling that person to, go ahead and tap or go ahead and scan to verify your identity. So there's efficiency. It makes it easier to train your staff who have to verify that identity. And then again, mitigating that fraud risk is key. And you mentioned concern with upfront costs. There are so many options. This ecosystem, as we call it, for mDL is very broad, and there are lots of different options for it. Could be new hardware, could even be software that could be upgraded, or software integration with your current software, whatever you're using. So there are a lot of options. I think the key is to engage, right? To engage cross-industry, to be able to get that adoption going. So again, we have the excitement for the usage, and then you have to have the other piece of it, which would be the accepting or relying parties to buy into it, to show that it does work, that it is beneficial, that it can reduce fraud, that it can improve efficiency. And so those are all key to businesses. And so with it being emerging technology, of course, businesses have to see that it works, of course, before you want to invest in it. Even, you talk about, monetary resources, but it could also be human resources that you invest as well. But there are a variety of ways to begin to start to accept the digital or mobile driver's license in your business, and show how it can work.
Yeah, no, I really like the point you mentioned about fraud, because what we hear from the news, it is so easy to fabricate a physical driver's license and create a new one.
Yeah, it
That's
is. It
one.
is.
That's one issue. And second is, as you mentioned, like every now and then there's a new version of a document, there's
Yeah.
a new template, and it is so hard to keep track of these versions. Somebody has to train their staff with new driver's licenses, different versions, and with mobile driver's license, obviously they don't have to train. They can optimize all of these operations. So there are some operational benefits from that angle.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So yeah, I mean, it boils down to maybe identifying some, certain areas of your business. Maybe you don't, outfit your entire operation with the ability. Maybe you start in some, in a particular part of your business that's scalable for you. And so that's key as well, right? So you don't want to buy devices that cost $10,000 each if you have 10,000 stations to equip. So it needs to be a scalable solution, and there are scalable solutions out there. Again, it could just be as simple as a software push and software maintenance to accept that. But it would be the engagement, I think, engaging these parties to maybe help identify, well, here's where it could be used as a pilot. Buy online, pick up in store. Maybe that's something. Picking up at the pharmacy, maybe just a pharmacy piece of your retail store, not the entire retail store. And so I think that's key, and that speaks to the collaborative effort in the ecosystem that it's going to take to get the adoption.
No, I really like that recommendation. Starting small, pick one use case, see how it goes, and then probably scale over time. I really like that. All right, so moving on, let's look ahead. So what's the future of Georgia mDL program? What adoption plans are in place for Georgia mDL program?
Okay, so we, of course, we have the TSA pilot that we've, had since the very beginning. So you can use your Georgia credential at TSA checkpoints here in Atlanta, in Georgia, and in other states and airports as well, because I've used it in other airports. But next for us, beyond that, will be for us to, again, show how it can work and show how it can make your business more efficient. So we started with ourselves. So we have some pilots going. We have a pilot going as that started in certain locations where you can use your mDL as sort of a fast pass, so to speak. We have a check-in process where you can fill out your application to check in, and that way, once you get to the counter, your application's already filled out. There's no one having to type anything in. So we've had that for a few years, where you can do it either online or you can do it at our locations on what we call tech decks, which were computer stations. And so we decided to see if we could use one space just to have it where you can use a device. We're currently using a Credence device, Credence ID device that's attached to a Surface Pro, and you can tap or scan your digital or mobile driver's license. And the great thing about it is, of course, it verifies that it's you, and so it can pre-populate your information. So you don't have to sit and type all that same information that we already have access to, your name, your date of birth, your address. We can just pre-populate this information, and you can confirm whether or not this information stays the same.
Yeah.
And so that cut down on that check-in process, maybe from 10 minutes to about 2 or 3 minutes.
That's great. I'm clearly, Georgia, your department is setting up a standard and example, saying, hey, we are behind this program and we are testing it in-house. We are using it because of the benefits of this program. And when people will check in, when they will use this program, they will be able to see the benefits that mDLs offer in their daily lives.
Right. We can be our own testers. in our own use case. And so that's where we're headed now. And of course, we're always spreading the word, doing things like this to talk to people who are interested, and really, because we're really at the point where, okay, we have it, it's ready to use. Let's get it, ready to use in other places.
Yeah, no, that's great. That sounds very exciting.
It is.
It is, yes. One challenge I hear frequently is the slow adoption of mDLs in other states and the need for national and international interoperability. How would you address some of these concerns, and how would you explain that being addressed in the near future?
Right. So you have the awareness for people to know that it exists, right? And then you have people to provision it, to download it in their wallet. And then you have, where can you use it? So that's that adoption on that relying party piece. And to make that easier, you need that interoperability. So I need to be able to use my Georgia digital license in Arizona. And Arizona needs to be able to use theirs in Colorado or Maryland. So it needs to be, cross jurisdiction lines. And that even goes for their international efforts for that too. So AMVA, which I mentioned earlier, again, they're doing the heavy lifting, and they have the digital trust service. So that serves as sort of a clearinghouse for those keys, those public keys that are necessary to verify. So that's how it actually, the digital driver's license that you present is actually verified through that reader having access to that public key. And so instead of having to go to each jurisdiction for a public key, there's a place that can house all those keys, and that is the AMVA Digital Trust Service. And so that is key to interoperability because it makes it easier for the reliant parties to have access to those keys.
And when we were talking, you also mentioned about Australia's Ausroads program and how they are coming up with their own digital trust service as well. And eventually US and Australia, they will be able to have like a central DTS service or exchange key. So anybody from US, when they travel to Australia, they can use their mobile driver's license and vice versa.
Right. I mean, the collaboration in the cross jurisdiction, that's the goal. But yes, this is, it's a U.S. effort with all of our different jurisdictions, our different states. But then there are also efforts globally to launch their own versions of the digital driver's license. Again, Australia and Ausroads, they're working pretty hard to have those that adoption and their digital trust service. So they've launched that, and so you have Europe, you have the EU with eReg. So in Europe, they expect legislation maybe next year, but once they do it, that's everyone in the EU that'll have those standards, because that's really the goal, is for everyone to adopt these international standards, which we have for other things. Like, that's why passports look similar. That's why driver's licenses across jurisdictions look similar. Maybe have different information on it, but it looks similar because of international standards. And so the adoption of those international standards is key to the interoperability, which is key to adoption, because if you can only use something in limited places, you're not going to want to use it very often.
Yeah. Now that's very comforting to hear that there are global efforts to make the mDLs interoperable across the boundaries and jurisdictions.
Right.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, Angelique, what would you do differently if you were to launch the Georgia mDL program today?
Well, I think we were perfectly positioned. At the time, we had already modernized our back-end system. We had already, gone cloud-based. So we had already done all this heavy IT upgrading. And so what I would say for any jurisdiction that is considering adopting mobile driver's license is to make sure that they do that heavy lifting, that modernization that's needed ahead of adopting such a large effort. But we're fortunate that, again, our people in Georgia were excited about it, accepting of it, and we're just ready to spread the word and also spread the use cases so there would be more adoption. But I think we were perfectly positioned to do it, to launch when we did. I mean, we had people, jurisdictions who launched prior to us, Arizona, Maryland, but now, you have other jurisdictions who have already launched as well. You have Colorado, again, Utah did a lot of heavy lifting, and they even did some grassroots work going to working with different banks and credit unions there in Utah to get their digital mobile driver's license off the ground. So again, jurisdictions have been working for a really long time to adopt and get the mobile driver's license going in their jurisdictions. So I think we were, again, perfectly positioned for the people who sort of came before us and at the same time as us. And then, but it's really all about being ready internally to undertake such a big change and such emerging technology. So I think we were perfectly positioned for it, having modernized.
No, I think you again mentioned a really important point that addresses some concerns of people who are saying why some states are not adapting mDLs quickly. I think it's the reason being it requires the right infrastructure to have in place. You need to have keys to make sure your deployment is conformed to standards, ISO standards, and so on. So that is obviously that takes time, and states are actively working on that.
Definitely. There are many states that are actively working on it. And as I mentioned, there are some states who have launched before we did. I mentioned Utah, but also Louisiana. They've had a version of a digital mobile driver's license, the LA wallet, for some time. So they're pioneers in it, and they even add other attributes in that LA wallet. And so that's an app-based version. But they have lots of users. I mean, many users, and it is something that they've worked on for many years. So again, there are lots of jurisdictions doing that hard work, and now we're all just wanting the relying party buy-in to spur that adoption.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Angelique, for sharing such valuable insights into Georgia's mDL program and the future of digital identity. It's clear that mDLs are here to stay.
Oh, yes,
and I'm
definitely.
so excited to see how this new technology will evolve in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited. Thank you.
Awesome. To all our listeners, I hope you found today's episode useful. If you're in Georgia, don't forget to check out how you can set up your own mDL. It's a very simple process, as we all heard, and will make your life easier when verifying your identity. And before we go, if you enjoyed today's discussion and want to stay informed about all the latest developments in mobile driver's licenses and digital identity, please like and subscribe to Demystifying Biometrics wherever you listen to podcasts. We have some very exciting episodes coming up where we will cover mDL standards, international landscape, and much more. You don't want to miss out all of this. Thanks again for listening. Stay tuned, stay safe, and we will see you next time on Demystifying Biometrics. Thank you so much, Angelique. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.